Welcome to the HR Fix, the HR podcast for HR professionals who want to grow and be the best. I'm Jude Fiddler and I'll be your host. So come and join us on our journey as we change an entire industry. Come on, let's get started. One of the HR issues that I wanted to talk about and share with you was to do with our reputation. As HR professionals, we know that we have a really bad reputation. I don't think anybody's talking about this, and I certainly don't think anyone's explaining about it. But our reputation is really bad to the point that we're actually turning away good people from the profession. And so it's worth diving into. It's worth exploring and finding out exactly what that is and where it's come from, and why does it exist? Is it a myth? Is it just that people hate HR? I mean, let's face it, we're the ones who come along. We tell people that they're not good at what they do. We're the ones who sort of almost start the fight. That's the wrong terminology, but we're the ones who bring the issues to the table. And sometimes that's a shock to people. So many processes start with, well, actually, such and such has been underperforming for 15 years. They've been with the company 15 years. No one's had that conversation. And it's down to us to start that process or to start that narrative. And of course, they're going to be, why are you picking on me? Why, what's going on? And that's just people's natural defense mechanisms. And I get all that. And that's really important. That's really valid. But I think that for years and years, I was going, well, that's why we're hated. It's not only that, it's the fact that we're bringing the challenges and the problems, but also we're the ones who can't talk about it. So whereas an employee might go around going, oh, HR, I've just done this, this, and this to me, we can't defend ourselves. We can't actually, that's wrong. What they didn't show you was that they've missed their target for 15 years on the run or whatever it is. We can't do that because of confidentiality, because of professionalism, and because of the way that we are inside of our role and the remit that we've got. So we're not able to defend ourselves. And I think for years, I just thought that was the problem and that was what it was all about. But it's not. Let me tell you, I have spent probably the last 20 years looking into this. And you can see on my social media, you can see on anybody's social media that the reputation that HR have is not a good one. For many, many reasons, we're not trusted, we're not believed, we're certainly not liked, no one knows whose side we're on. It's very unclear what our remit is. We don't communicate very well, we're not communicated with very well. Like, all of these things add to this problem. And to do with the fact that actually we're in a really bad situation to start with. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome. It's no wonder we have imposter syndrome. We're on our own. We're given really bad instructions. We're never given the proper, we call it a dump and drop, but we're never given the proper, this is what you need to do, and this is how you have to do it, this is what you need to do about it. We get just make such and such a person redundant. Just go and deal with that. Just go. And we can't go and talk about this to anybody. So it's no wonder really that we have issues with our own self-confidence when people are not believing in us either. That's part of the problem. But it's become more and more obvious to me as I've been looking into this more and more over the past few years that it's not just employees who necessarily have a problem with us and give us a bad reputation, which you would come to expect from what we do. It's also employers. And that's a huge issue. And this is what I see the change being right now, is that employers are starting to think about us in terms of not being commercial, not worth the value, not being any different to administrative staff, just carrying out a function. Why have I got them? Why am I paying for them when I've got processes in my filing cabinet or online, or, on my intranet system that I could be following, and tick boxes that I could be, templates that I could be filling in and doing all these things. And my managers could just be doing that. What is the added value from HR? And so our value has become questioned over the years, and especially now with AI coming in and more templates and all these sorts of horrible things that are just making us, leading us straight into templated disaster and literally unfair dismissals. Because we think we've ticked a box and then we fill in a blank, fill in a letter, and it's all good. And that's not how it works. But that's what we're led to believe. That's what that's the way that bad HR is going. And it's making employers think, why am I needing that? Why am I paying for that? I'm just not getting value for money. And I think the crunch point for us was during COVID. And we've said this before, but it was during COVID when literally 50% of HR professionals were furloughed, without even any thought. I don't want them in the business. I could save some money and let's get them out of the business. When that was the biggest time when we should have been tested, it was the biggest people issue ever that we would have to deal with mental health, with the different terms and conditions, different changes, different working from home, different vulnerabilities, different reasonable adjustments. That was our time to shine, and employers didn't let us do that. And literally half of HR professionals were literally sent home at the first. And that speaks volumes. And that's why our reputation needs to change. That's why we need to be looking at it and changing it. And I have to say, and this is really controversial, and I'm not saying this to annoy anybody. I'm not saying this to say, actually, the industry is really, really bad and has to change. But the fact is that a lot of the issues, a lot of the abuse, because that's what it is, or a lot of the negative feelings that we have towards us about HR and the HR that we deliver, a lot of the negativity, I'm going to say, is justified. And you only need to sit inside of the employment tribunals that understand about the case laws, which is exactly what we're doing with our HR Mindset magazine, is to understand and to see the way that we're leading companies into problems. We are not doing investigations properly. We are not understanding our remit. We are not even drafting allegations properly. We're certainly not doing our letters properly. We're not following a process properly, even though we shouldn't be doing it, but we think we're doing it, but we're not doing that properly. And we need to up our game. I believe that a lot of the justification, a lot of the issues that we have to face and we have to answer are actually valid. And I was talking very recently to, I put stuff all over social media about, we need to up our game, we need to be better, HR is in rehab. I talk about that sort of stuff all the time. And I do occasionally, very occasionally, not often, but occasionally have somebody come to me and say, oh, that's not true. My HR department is great. And I love those conversations and I always try and engage with them. And I'll say to somebody, oh, that's amazing. Tell me, why are you saying your HR is so good? And they'll say, well, my HR is brilliant because I've been ill recently and they let me stay at home. I'm like, oh, okay. What else do they do? Well, actually, they let me stay at home and they kept in communication with me and, all these things. And they arranged for an occupational health. And we're talking about reasonable adjustments now. That was something that happened to me last week. That's the real story. That's, why somebody was saying my HR, don't say that HR are bad or that they're broken because look what they've done for me. And I started talking with that person and said, okay, talk me through the business. And it was quite a senior person in the business. And I said, well, talk me through what's going on. Well, yeah, we have settlement agreements. So we don't go to tribunal. We're all afraid of tribunal. So we settle out claims. And so what he was actually explaining to me was the fact that basically he liked the compassion. That's not what HR is there for. You might as well have a school nurse or you could have a counselor. You could have anybody that's going to be doing that compassion part for you, but that's not what HR is. The part that HR is the bit that saves you from making the mistakes, which means you're going to have these settlement agreements because they're scared of tribunal is a separate issue. Not even going to discuss that one. But to say that actually they're good because they send me home early when I'm not well, or they keep in touch with me, or, they're always there to give me a tissue when I'm crying, all of those sorts of things, that's great. But then I'm not knocking that. I'm really not. But that's not what HR is there for. And I think even HR don't understand what they're there for, which is a problem why I'm saying HR is broken. Employers don't know why HR are there, which is a problem when I'm saying that's why it's broken. And the employers are completely confused. I've just had a message very recently, last day or so, on TikTok from a HR professional who said that they've been in HR for 2 or 3 years now and only just realized that they're not there to support the employee. How does that make any sense? How can they have been there 2 or 3 years and not realize what their remit was? That means that they weren't putting the company first when they've been doing their job. That has to be our remit, right? And we talk a lot more about our remit when it comes to the concepts and when it comes to our bootcamp, but our remit is to protect an organization, right? Many of us know that. Many of us, understand that if it was a priority between the employer and the employee, who would we choose? But there is confusion. There is no clear what our remit is. We don't know what good looks like. We don't have targets. People say to me all the time, yes, we do have targets. I have to get so many people recruited by such and such a day. Well, that's not a target. That if that's your target, then you're recruiting for the wrong things. You've got the wrong agenda because you're just going to go out and get the people who can start the fastest. That's not necessarily good for the business. If you've got a target which is to keep sickness down, then that means that you're possibly being unfair to people who've got a disability because you're so eager to get them inside the company that you're promising them things that maybe can't deliver or reasonable adjustments and things that are unfair because you just want them inside the business because that's your target. When we're given a target or a goal, it's not normally relevant. It's not normally fair. It's not normally justified. And it's certainly not normally lawful. So actually working to targets and goals is not our remit. So we don't know what good looks like inside of HR. We don't know what we're working for, which is why we've created all these concepts of why we've created our bootcamp. So we do know what good looks like. But normally in normal everyday HR life and world, we don't know what our expectations are. And certainly our expectations of our role and employees' expectations of role and employers' expectation of role are completely different. And this is something that needs to be looked at. And that's when we're saying this mindset needs to change, but it has to start with us. It has to start with the HR professional. Unless we know what we're doing, then how are we going to get other people on board? How do we know that they're going to buy into our idea of what HR is, especially with setting goals? And it all starts with this phrase, good. What is good HR? We know that good HR lands differently, but what does that mean? What is the value that we're bringing? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Who are we working for? And what does that even mean? And that's what I want you to start thinking about today inside of your job immediately, without fail. That's what I want you to start thinking about. Who am I serving? What is my role? How am I helping? How am I bringing value? And am I doing the right things? Because if you're phoning up people to ask them if they're okay, that's lovely. That's nice. I'm not knocking that, but that is not your HR job. I hope you have a really good day. Don't forget, happy HRing.